Good day. Welcome to my lecture.
May okay yung sound sa inyo?
Yes po,
Yes
Doc.
po, Doc.
Yes po, Doc.
Okay. Start ko na. Tapos again, if you have any questions, type lang kayo sa chat box and I can answer them in between the different segments and or sa dulo after all has been done.
Introduction to Laboratory Medicine. I am Dr. Robert Glenn Abisamis from the Department of Pathology and Clinical Laboratory. So here are disclaimers regarding this presentation. And this is the content of my lecture to you today. So this year, malamang nabalitaan nyo naman na grabe ang role ng laboratory sa COVID-19 at wala tayong narinig for the past few days kundi test. Kaya dumadami na-detect. Tapos narinig nyo na yung term sa RT-PCR, rapid testing, etc. So this year, mayroong kaming colleague from the Philippine Heart Center, Dr. Tandok, nasabi na Year of the Filipino Pathologist. During the past few months, kaming mga pathologists, although hindi kami direct frontliner, we have been doing our best to aid our clinicians via the diagnosis of COVID-19, either through your testing na narinig nyo, other serologic methods such as ECLIA and your enzyme serologic testing, and also yung molecular methods such as your RT-PCR. So, naging prominente ang role ng lab during the few months, and what I'm going to lecture to you is simply an overview on how we do things sa laboratory. Ang problema kasi, some of the clinicians, parang ang trato nila sa lab parang siyang black box. So, you give a specimen that has something to it, then when it comes back as a result, hindi naiintindihan yung entire process sa gitna. Tapos pag mayroong problems, hindi alam kung paano i-troubleshoot kasi minsan hindi naman you can't take the result up front. You have to understand how these tests work, kasi kung hindi, pwedeng yun pala, false positive, false negatives na pala yung result ninyo. So right now, ganito ang itsura namin sa laboratories right now, naka-full PPE, especially for those areas that do the COVID-19 testing. So, and you've seen probably a lot of reports and websites checking how coronavirus test kits work, how does PCR work, etc. So what I'll give to you today is a brief overview on how the laboratory works and how does the specimen arrive to a laboratory result. So why do we order lab tests? So it's an aid to diagnosis. Big sabihin nito ay aside from history and physical examination, you do your laboratory tests to confirm basically your diagnosis. You can evaluate prognosis, for example, yung mga tumor markers natin, especially in the field of cancer. Kasama na rin doon yung monitoring of therapy, again with tumor markers. So when it increases, you know that either bumalik ang tumor mo or meron ka talaga in the first place. Pero you don't diagnose diseases per se with just laboratories. You always need a clinical background before you arrive to a diagnosis. Also, you screen for diseases, for example, diabetes, hypertension. Hypertension, strictly speaking, laboratory methods, hindi masyado nakakatulong doon. Pero it's the effects of, it's the causes of hypertension ang gusto mong ma-check. For example, are you suspecting atherosclerosis? Mataas ba lipid profile ng pasyente nyo? For diabetes, you have your HbA1c, you have your FBS, you have your CBG to screen for your diseases. So all of these you'll be encountering in the next few weeks when we introduce to you the specific tests for each disease condition, both in your pathology course and your clinical diagnosis course. So what are the stages of laboratory analysis? So we have 3 steps here: your pre-analysis, analysis, and post-analysis. So when you say pre-analysis, it's all the complex steps prior to sample analysis. So mula sa extract ng specimen, ano ba yung condition ng pasyente, paano nyo pinaprepare ang sample, tapos nun, lahat ng processes na yon hanggang sa makarating yon sa laboratory. For analysis, it's all the steps involved in sample analysis. Ano yung instrument na ginagamit mo? Okay ba yung quality na ini-enforce sa laboratory? Kamusta ang turnaround time niyan? Gaano kabilis ang pinaprocess? Then you have your post-analysis, which is the validation of the results up to the release of the laboratory report. So doon pumapasok yung mga sa mga naging medtech, may term kami na nagawag is data check. So you compare the result now to the previous results. So chine-check kung tama ba yung result o hindi. Dito din pumapasok yung critical value relaying. So yung values ba na lumitaw na after the examination of the sample, ang critical values, pag ganun kasi kailangan itawag agad yan sa floors kasi it needs an immediate intervention. So this is basically the process of a summary of all of those processes. You have your pre-analysis, so test selection, patient preparation, sample preparation, tapos kasama na rin dito yung sample collection, patient identification, sample identification, transportation, analytical phase, mostly sa laboratory na to, and then your post-analytical phase. Babalik yan ulit sa inyo. And how do you understand the results na pinoproduce ng laboratory? Majority of the sources of error sa mga laboratory tests are in this area. For long-time vegetarians, of course, madi-decrease ang mga lipoproteins sila, lipids, cholesterol, and triglycerides. However, vitamin B12 would also be decreased, and it could be bad enough that you will have to recommend supplementation for these patients. For those taking high meat and high protein diets, such as your paleo diet, you will have increase in urea, ammonia, and urate levels. In some studies, it has even shown to exacerbate gout because of these reasons. Yung Atkins diet natin, which is a high protein and low carb diet, you may see increases in urinary ketones and serum BUN. Intake of caffeine and alcohol will also affect your analytes as well. So for caffeine, you expect increases in free fatty acid and catecholamines. For alcohol intake, pag short-term alcohol ingestion lang naman, you may see mild elevations in your lactate, urate, and triglycerides. However, for chronic alcoholism, you will see severe increases in your HDL, GGT, and MCV. For obese patients, you will expect that there is increase in LDH, cortisol, glucose, and insulin. And for men, it has been shown that obese men would have their serum testosterone levels decreased. So posture. So even the manner of how you get your specimens also affect certain analytes. So for example, pag nag-upright position ka during phlebotomy, so siguro from supine, bigla kang umupo, meron kang changes in albumin and calcium. Incorrect tourniquet application, tapos nag-fist exercise ka, you may see increases in your lactate. If prolonged yung tourniquet application mo, ibig sabihin ng prolonged tourniquet application, it means more than 1 minute. You will see increases in your serum enzymes, proteins, cholesterol, calcium, and triglycerides. If the patient is on prolonged bed rest, you may see decreases in hemoglobin. In fact, maraming mga clinicians ang naloloko dito na because they suddenly ordered a prolonged bed rest na patient, kumuha ng hemoglobin, akala nila anemic because of some reason. They do a full workup. So just make sure, tandaan nyo na sudden pag nag-shift ka to bed rest and for a prolonged time, tapos kumuha ka, you may expect decrease in hemoglobin. Tobacco smoking is one of your in vivo interferences. So in general, you will see changes in your carboxyhemoglobin, plasma catecholamines, cortisol levels, neutrophils, monocytes, and free fatty acids will be increased as well. However, there will be a decrease in eosinophils. So you should normal values for eosinophils only around until 5 usually or 6. So pag naging 0 na yun medyo magtaka na kayo sa baka pwedeng i-attribute to tobacco smoking yan. For your chronic smokers, you will see increases in your hemoglobin, RBC count, MCV, WBC. Mostly this is a compensation kasi for the presence of carboxyhemoglobin. So nag-i-try sila magkaroon ng increased production para efficient pa rin ang oxygen delivery. You will see also increases in your lactate, insulin, epinephrine, growth hormones. And there is a relative state actually of immunodeficiency. As you can see here, IgA, IgG, and IgM are decreased. These are immunoglobulins that you will encounter pagdating sa discussion on your immune system. Decreased sila for chronic smokers. So mas madali sila magkasakit. For men, if you do your seminalysis for chronic smokers, there is a decrease in sperm count and motility, and sperm morphology becomes more abnormal. Kaya that may contribute to your infertility issues for those chronic smokers in men. So the next would be our collection-associated variables. So tatlo lang naman actually pinag-usapan talaga dito, yung hemolyzed lipemic sample at yung jaundice. So you can see here sa mga images natin, what do those look like? Doon sa pinaka-left side are the normal. So ito yung normal natin, na sample na serum after centrifugation. However, for hemolysis, you will see varying degrees nagiging from orange to red. For lipemic, magiging very cloudy na specimen. And for jaundice, magiging greenish-brown yung serum mo. Pag may ganyan, flag na yan agad for rejection ng specimen. It is best that you get a new sample for testing because hindi magiging efficient ang analysis ng samples ito, especially since we're using spectrophotometers. So, what are the conditions na nangyayari ang hemolysis? Usually, ang number one cause would be difficult phlebotomy. So, for example, nag-insert ka ng needle, tapos tumago siya, tapos pinilit mo pa rin kumuha ng sample. You may cause shearing forces sa RBCs and it will lyse. So, maging hemolyzed ang specimen ninyo. Ang problem, it will cause false elevations in your potassium, magnesium, iron, LDH, phosphorus, ammonium, and total protein. Ang pinaka-worry kami dito is actually the potassium levels kasi pag tumaas ang potassium levels to above 5, it is already a risk for arrhythmia and that's what we are trying to prevent. So, kailangan tama ang specimen mo. For your leukemic patients, sila kasi they have a high number of blasts. Pag ang problema kasi with your blast cells is that they're incredibly fragile cells, so madali silang mag-lyse din as well. So tataas din ang potassium levels nila. Okay? So be worried lang about that. For icteric serum, icteric serum is caused by increase in bilirubin talaga. So, expect mo na talaga na high levels of bilirubin na pinag-uusapan natin dito. And as a consequence, you will see decreases in your albumin, cholesterol, and total protein. For your lipemic serum, it happens when your triglyceride is highly elevated as well. So, ang problem nito, you may cause problems in reading your amylase, urea, CK, bilirubin, and total protein analytes. Magiging decrease naman yung mga yun. Now, special issues would be the effects of drugs on your analytes. So, for pinaka-notorious dito would be your vitamin C because ascorbic acid would interfere dun sa mga oxidation reduction reactions natin. So, as you can see here, mayroon kang difference sa urine glucose. So, if you're doing urine glucose via as a reducing substrate method, so that's an oxidation reduction reaction, it may cause a false positive. And if you do urine glucose naman via an enzymatic method, that it means we're using a different, it could be that you're using a different machine to analyze your urine glucose. Normal ang values mo. Next would be topical iodine and chlorine. So that would interfere with your guaiac-based testing for occult blood. It will cause false positive levels. Same with, kasama nito yung pag-intake natin ng meat and iron supplements. Magiging falsely positive ang occult blood result mo. For diuretics, you may have, if your patient is taking the diuretics, you will expect na babagsak ang potassium levels. And if your patient is on warfarin, because it's an anticoagulant, you will see increases in prothrombin time. So actually, this is just a very short discussion on these effects of drugs kasi basically, it's divided into three mechanisms actually. One is the interference of your analytical process, so that's usually seen in vitamin C. Meron kang effects due to drugs basically, as in like yung effect ng drugs sa katawan ng tao like your warfarin, talagang bibilis ang prothrombin time if your patient is taking warfarin. And the last would be your other methods of interference such as your what iodine and chlorine does for your occult blood testing. So there's a long list somewhere out there. I'm not recommending that you memorize that, but you have to remember na that's why we ask you during your history taking to elicit ano ba yung tinitake ng pasyente ninyo. Kasi not necessarily your or your medications lang. It could be supplements as well, your herbal medications, because those will also have an effect on certain analytes as well. Now, the last that could greatly affect your testing would be the anticoagulants present dun sa tube nyo. Now, this would be a future lecture when we deal with blood extractions and phlebotomy in your future lecture. But this is just an overview kung ano yung available, kung ano yung mga stoppers natin, yung sa test tubes, diba? Pag nakita yung test tube, may iba't ibang colors yan. So it means different thing. It means that there are different anticoagulants contained within each container. Ang basic message nito is that when you are using these tubes to transport the specimen, it has to be the right test tube for the right analyte, or else you will really have errors in analyzing. Also, it has to be at the correct amount because there is a predetermined value kung gaano kadami yung anticoagulant na present dun sa tubes na yon. Pag mali ka ng amount of blood na nilagay doon, hindi magiging tama yung yung epekto anticoagulant na yon dun sa specimen, and that could cause problems in your analysis. So that's for the main overview of your pre-analytic factors. In the last part of my lecture, I'll be talking about analytical factors and your post-analysis. So at this point, your specimen has already been submitted to the laboratory, and now it's time to analyze that specimen to get a laboratory result. So we begin with your analytical factors. Once it's submitted to the laboratory, your specimen is being transferred into the different parts of the laboratory. So the laboratory is divided into two main sections, the anatomic pathology section and the clinical pathology section. Under anatomic pathology, you have your histopathology, cytology, and forensic services, if your hospital has. And then you have the other main branch, which is clinical pathology. So you have under there clinical chemistry, clinical microscopy, microbiology, hematology, blood bank, immunology, and in some laboratories, they will have a molecular diagnostic section. So we begin first with the clinical pathology section. So first is clinical chemistry. So it's where you use chemicals to measure substances that are non-immunologic in nature. Usually, we measure here your carbohydrates such as glucose, lipids, enzymes, and then your proteins like albumin and globulin. For clinical microscopy, you use a microscope to see the elements of a disease. So, where do you do that? You usually analyze your urine and your feces in here. So that's urinalysis and fecalysis. Seminalysis is also done in this section as well. Next is microbiology, in which you use stains and cultures to identify microorganisms. So you do gram staining, culture sensitivity, and AFB determination. In some laboratories, their microbiology section also has mini molecular diagnostic section, because some of the entities like AFB are to diagnose TB. You need to you use TB PCR methods as well, like your gene expert. So nilalagay usually yung machine na yan sa microbiology section. Next is your hematology section, in which you do your analysis and morphology, and you analyze the morphology and the function of your blood cells and your clotting factors. So, dyan yung CBC, coagulation studies, yung mga peripheral blood smear, yung mga ganong klaseng test. Dito yan lahat sa hematology. For blood bank, that is where you collect, process, and store blood for transfusion. So, dito nagaganap yung blood typing, cross-matching, antibody screening. If you're watching the news recently, nabalitaan nyo na malamang yung convalescent plasma therapy for your for COVID-19, for severe COVID-19 patients. So dun din, under din yan ang blood bank. Under yan kasi parang siyang convalescent plasma therapy kasi is parang a special form of blood donation. Under siya kasi ng apheresis, kung saan ang kinukuha mo lang basically is plasma. For immunology and serology, it's where you measure or makes use of antibodies for determining the presence of antibodies or antigens. So dito for infectious diseases against the COVID-19 nandito in the form of yung mga rapid tests kasi you're measuring IgG and IgM nandito. Yung naririnig nyo sa news, yung ECLIA method and yung ELISA method, dito yan lahat sa immunology serology section. Aside from infectious diseases, you can also measure hormones, drugs, especially for your drug testing tayo, and yung tumor markers nyo, like yung CA125, CA19-9, etc. Dito yan, sa section ng immunology. For histopath, so, nandito na tayo ang histopath ang pinaka-main branch talaga ng anatomic pathology. It's where you examine your tissues and cells. So, ang main sections mo dito would be your surgical pathology section, cytology, and autopsy. And then, I put molecular diagnostics here sa last because hindi lahat ng lab meron ganito. Pero during this pandemic ng COVID-19, there was a rush para magpatayo ng molecular diagnostic sections in many laboratories since the main method, the confirmatory test is RT-PCR, which is a molecular method. So, dito basically you're trying to examine specimens on a molecular level. So, kasama na dyan infectious disease, HLA typing, and oncology. So, right now, dumami ang laboratories that have this kind of section. For FEU, we'll be starting to put up our own molecular diagnostic section as well. Pero we're using muna yung mga gene expert machines natin to do the work. Ang maganda kasi sa gene expert, parang all of the reactions are already in one kit. So you don't need talaga three separate rooms to do the PCR reaction. Nandun lang siya sa isang room. So before we proceed muna sa ibang parts, I just want to make a short note on histopathology because it's not going to be included talaga in our future lectures here in CDA and in the next sem, CDB natin. Pero kasi you need to be also aware kung paano, kung ano yung mga specimens na nakukuha nila at paano magsasubmit na specimens doon. So, for surgical pathology, ang mga specimens doon usually yung mga biopsies natin. Core, excision, incision biopsies, yung mga radical dissections natin, yan yung kasama sa surgical pathology. Basically, anything na tinanggal nyo sa OR na organs ng pasyente o tissues ng mga patient, it has to be sent to this section for analysis. Kasi part din yan ng auditing process ng isang ospital. For cytology, that's where you do your fine needle aspiration, pap smears, and effusions. Doon pinaprocess ito. And of course, you have your autopsy, which includes yung included sa section na to, yung pag-handle ng morgue. So how do you submit for your specimens? For surgical pathology, you usually place your specimens in 10% neutral buffered formalin. Pwede ding fresh for certain procedures like yung mga intraoperative evaluations natin. Kailangan fresh yun. Although these days, medyo maingat kami because of COVID-19. For cytology, fresh din ang pag-submit for certain procedures. Otherwise, you place the specimen in 95% ethanol for at least 1 minute so that you deactivate the virus as well. Also, as a side note, formalin is also a good deactivator of viruses. Kaya kaya kailangan ang directive namin sa histopath laboratories is that you fix the specimen, you place it in 10% neutral buffered formalin for at least 1 minute. If your specimens are small, pero pag malaki yung specimens, kailangan mas matagal. We usually leave it for up to 72 hours para sigurado kami na patay yung virus. For autopsy, of course, there is no way to submit this but fresh. Preferably fresh talaga hinahandle ng autopsy kasi when you process embalmed cadavers already, ang problema, there are changes caused by the embalming process. Tsaka, mas masakit sa ilong mag-process ng embalm dahil ang lakas ng amoy ng formalin. So, preferred talaga na fresh. So, ang problem lang doon, pag fresh, syempre, kailangan talaga full PPE ka dahil hindi mo alam kung anong klase, kung anong mga sakit ang meron doon sa patient na yun, kung ba't siya namatay. So how do you diagnose these specimens? You will just have to refer to your pathology A and B lectures. Kasi kung ano man yan nakikita niyo sa microscope, doon sa subjects niyo na yon, ganun ang pag-diagnose na dito sa histopath. Next, instruments. So, madaming instruments. I'm not going to go to the nitty-gritty of it. Pero basically, yung pag-manage ng mga instruments nyo, kasama yan sa analysis process. Is the machine working? Yung reagents ba ay hindi expired? Yung mga yung quality control ba nagagawa daily? Wala ka bang problem sa quality control when you run it on a daily basis? If you want to go into the nitty-gritty of this, I suggest na mag-rotate kayo sa department namin para makita nyo kung paano yung ginagawa. Pero these instruments is just a small component, a small number of instruments of what you actually see sa loob ng laboratory natin. So now is the last part, yung post-analysis process natin. So tapos na-analyze na yung specimen, merong na yung machine nagbigay na ng result. Interpretation ngayon ang kailangan natin gawin. So, unang kailangan natin values. So you have your reference value which is based on the 95% of a healthy population. So ito yung normal values na nakikita natin doon sa laboratory report natin. But you have to take note na meron kang natitirang 5% na normal siya yung values na yon, pero kasi nasa upper limit at lower limit of normals na siya. So medyo slightly or slightly elevated or slightly decreased ang value dun sa normal value na yon. That is to take account para dun sa mga yung mga physiologically normal, like yung mga athletes natin. As I've discussed earlier, mas matataas ng konti ang mga muscle enzyme values nila because of their condition. So pwedeng elevated ng slightly kasi this value has to represent the entire population, the majority of the population. Significant values is when is a value that you have to make a clinical decision. Best example dito would be your hemoglobin level, kung ano yung threshold level mo for blood transfusion. In the old guidelines kasi, and in some societies, mga guidelines nila, ang pinaka-cut-off nila is 7 grams per deciliter para sa pag-transfuse. So, pag bumaba doon sa 7 na yon, signal yun sa kanila. They need to transfuse. Yun yung parang significant value sa kanila. Same with potassium. Pag nag-increase pag mas mataas sa 5 yung value, automatic na yan. They have to make a clinical decision based from there. Okay? So itong significant values, these are not printed. These are based on guidelines coming from the respective specialties natin. Pero ang pinaka-important dito would be your critical values. These are values that need immediate attention. When we say how immediate is immediate attention, pag merong lumabas dito, like for example, in this one, pumasok dito, you need to call the clinician ASAP kasi they might do something. Like for example, creatinine, elevated, sobrang elevated to more than 4 milligrams per deciliter. Baka, natin sa kanila yan, kailangan na nila mag-dialysis, for example, or alam na at least nila na nagkakaroon na ng renal failure yung pasyente mo. So, they need to do something na. Same din with your troponin level. So, ibig sabihin nito, nag-MI ang pasyente. Kailangan may gawin na sila. Etc. So, parang ganun lang yung point ng critical lab values. When the value of your laboratory result falls under these, the medtech should call already the clinicians to inform them na may nangyayari, you need to do something fast. Next is accuracy and precision. Ito siguro matunog to during the past few days because of our issues with the rapid test kits for COVID-19. So just to review muna, what is accuracy? Accuracy means it's close to the true value. And this is best for diagnosis, usually in comparison to a gold standard. Your precision, that means reproducibility. So, ibig sabihin, kahit ilang beses mo i-run yung sample mo, dapat magkakalapit ang values nila. Pwedeng same, basta magkakalapit sila. And this is good if you're trying to monitor patients. Kaya ang best example na pwede kong ibigay dito is testing ng tumor markers ng mga oncology patients natin. Ang problem kasi, minsan tumatalon-talon sila ng laboratory. And laboratories will have different machines to measure tumor markers. Although meron kang numerical value doon na lumilitaw, ang kailangan kasi pag inulit mo siya sa iba't ibang laboratories, yung tumor marker values na yon, dapat magkakapareho sila, 'di ba? Pero kasi remember na pwedeng merong variations doon sa pagkaka-construct nung machine na yon. So pwedeng sa isang laboratory sabihin nating 600 ang value, pero sa isang laboratory 500 ang value. Parehong elevated, pero malayo yung values. So that's why we always advise patients na if they're doing serial monitoring of their tumor markers or something else, basta kailangan mo ng serial monitoring, stick to one lab. And so you can safely monitor kung tama ba yung pag-rise and pag-fall ng values mo. Okay. Now, dito na pumapasok yung truth table natin. So, you might have seen this when you in your research subjects or epidemiology subjects. So basically, in making sure that a laboratory test is good, you compare it always to a gold standard. O kaya you compare it to the presence of or absence of disease kung gusto mo malaman kung effective ang test. So, eventually, you should be able to construct this 4x4 table na you will have values for true positive. So, ibig sabihin nito, you have the disease and positive ang result mo. True negative, so negative for disease, negative ang result. False negatives, which means positive for the disease, pero negative ang result mo. And then, you have your false positives, which means wala ka namang sakit, pero positive ang result mo. For your rapid tests in COVID-19, ito ang nagiging issue natin, yung mga falsely negative. Okay? So, meron silang sakit, pero ang result ay negative. So, yun yung kinatatakot natin these days. Okay? So, let's discuss the values that you can extrapolate based on that truth table. So, for your guide, on the corner here, I have placed the truth tables natin. So, when you see the formula in here, kaya nyo balikan kung paano yung interpretation nito. So, for sensitivity, the formula is true positive versus all those with positive for disease. So, this sensitivity is used to determine if the diagnostic test is good for screening diseases. And how it tells you how well a test detects disease without missing some deceased individual. So, ibig sabihin, gusto mo talaga makuha dito lahat ng merong may sakit. Okay? So, meaning, if you miss a deceased individual, bad ang test mo. And what you want for a good sensitivity test is to generate more true positive results and a few false negatives. So that's why usually after a sensitivity test, you proceed with you start with the screening test, ibig sabihin mataas ang sensitivity nun, then you proceed with the confirmatory test para malaman mo kung talaga nga ba siyang positive o hindi. So next is specificity. So the formula in here is true negative over all patients with negative disease. So ito yung formula natin. So this is used for confirmation of a disease that has been suggested by other data. Tells you how good a test is at detecting those individuals that have a disease. It's needed when a false positive can harm the patient. So ibig sabihin, you have to distinguish dito between true negatives and the few false positives. Okay? So ito, sensitivity, tandaan nyo, good for screening. Specificity, if mataas, good siya for confirmation. So next, we will briefly discuss the predictive values. So the specificity and sensitivity values is used to decide whether or not to use the test. That is part of your, you use these values when you're trying to select yung laboratory test mo, which is actually produced once you have the results na. Once the test has the results, the sensitivity and specificity are no longer relevant. Ang tanong mo na lang dito is, pag nakita ko ang result ng patient at pag sinabing positive, totoo ba na talagang positive ang pasyente mo o hindi? Or kung negative ang result na makuha mo, totoo bang talaga bang negative ang pasyente mo or ano siya, falsely negative? So, you're testing now your predictive values, which is the probability of a disease after the test result. So, dalawa ito, yung positive predictive value and your negative predictive value. In positive predictive value, ibig sabihin yan, the higher the number, ibig sabihin, you can rely that your test, if it says positive, talagang positive ang pasyente ninyo. Whereas your negative predictive value, if your test says negative, ibig sabihin talagang negative ang pasyente mo for that disease. And the last is efficiency, which is the ability of the test to detect correctly. So, ibig sabihin, how correct ang test mo, which is actually one of the major issues that we've been encountering doon sa mga rapid test kits natin. Problem kasi, ang pinaka-gist ng problem niyan is because meron kang immediate concern, nag-produce agad yung mga manufacturers ng mga test kits na to without even testing it kung talaga nga bang tama siya o hindi. So, ang tawag kasi doon is emergency use. So, ibig sabihin, emergency gumamit sila ng test na yun para masabi kung talaga nga bang positive ang pasyente for COVID-19 o hindi. Ang basis niya kasi is antibodies, which is an indirect test. So ngayon, ang problem, may mga ibang brands that it turns out 40% lang yung kanilang efficiency. May mga ibang rapid kits na maganda, nearly 100% ang kanilang efficiency. So ano ibig sabihin nun ng 40%? Ibig sabihin nun, mas okay pa na mag-coin toss ka. Kasi ang coin toss, di ba, heads or tails lang. So ibig sabihin, ang probability mo is 50%. So, ibig sabihin, mas efficient pa yung coin toss kaysa sa some of those test kits na 40% lang ang efficiency rate niya. So, that's why ito matunog to na term, efficiency. In some literature, it's called accuracy as well. Okay lang yan, interchangeable sila. So, this one is actually from Wikipedia. So, although sinasabi namin na hindi dapat kayo kumukuha sa Wikipedia. Pero, this is a very, very good depiction sa kung anong klaseng values na mapoproduce mo just by forming that truth table. Pero for the purposes of this lecture, ang importante lang sa inyo would be your sensitivity and specificity. So, ito siya, sensitivity, specificity, and then your positive predictive value, negative predictive value, and then your accuracy over here. Okay? Now, after all that's said and done, mamimili ka na ng you want to apply it to your patients as well. So, usually, when you encounter a patient, you ask for routine examinations, routine laboratory examinations. Pero kasi, um, when you say routine, how do you select yung what is routine? So, based on previous studies, minabuo silang parang meron silang parang nabuong guide kung what constitutes a routine examination. So for blood tests, that includes usually your CBC, anything that can measure glucose, which is FBS and HbA1c, something to check sa kidney mo, which is so that would be your creatinine or BUN, and then something to check sa liver mo, which is AST, ALT, and the platelets na makikita mo sa CBC test. Other lab tests na ginagamit na as routine urinalysis. But as you can see from this table, mayroon pang ibang ginagamit sedimentation rate, TSH, pero at a very, very low percentage. So, di pa ako nakakita na kasama ang ESR at TSH. Pero then again, this study was released in 2002. So, a lot of these are already outdated. Ang na-retain lang talaga itong top 4 natin plus urinalysis. Ito kasi, ECG and chest radiograph, sa labas na to ng laboratory, sa IM na yan and radiology respectively. Preoperatively, ganun din. So, what constitutes a preoperative routine examination? Based on studies, same pa rin as previous, pero you have to add tests for hemostasis. So, that's your PT and PTT this time, para ma-check kung nagko-coagulate ba ng tama ang dugo ng pasyente ninyo. Because kapag yan ay highly elevated, hindi mag-oopera ang surgeon mo. So, routine examinations are, in some literatures, we call it as baseline tests. There are several guidelines that exist on what constitutes as routine. Sa US, they have this main guideline kung what constitutes as routine based on age. So that's helpful. So for example, when you're hitting 40, you want to add a lipid profile. When you're hitting 50, you want to add a colonoscopy with biopsy because you're trying to screen for colon cancer. Depende kasi sa risks on the age and risks ng pasyente mo. So remember though that these routine examinations are general screening tests, and any derangements from there would lead to further investigation. With the current situation in the COVID-19 pandemic, ang nangyayaring right now is the testing for COVID-19 became routine already. So when you check the algorithms released by the government and WHO, anything that if your patient basically comes in with fever and cough, automatically do a test for COVID-19. And right now, any patients that will undergo surgery, whether minor or major, would have to do a test for COVID-19 as well. So, ang nangyayari right now, because of this situation that we are in, the COVID-19 tests, yung PCR method specifically, is now becoming one of your baseline tests for your patient. So, this is an example of a routine test natin, yung complete blood count natin. Ignore nyo na lang itong top 3 kasi nagpa-request din tong patient na to ng ferritin, TSH, and vitamin B12. Pero for your CBC count, ito siyang lahat. And as you can see here, may mga abnormal. So, for example, yung mga annual physical exams, pag normal ang CBC mo, okay ang pasyente mo. Because that's a good screening test ng CBC for any hematologic disorder. Pero if you see anything na abnormal dito, usually you do another test as well. So, dito na lumalabas yung konsepto natin ng screening and confirmatory test. So, you do another test now to confirm your findings dito. So, usually, pag ganito, ang iniisip mo kasi is iron deficiency anemia, a peripheral blood smear will do. So, a peripheral blood smear, this is a test used for further investigation. So, ang kaibahan ng peripheral blood smear is instead of ang CBC kasi, pinapasok mo siya sa makina, tapos nun, may result ka. For peripheral blood smear, you have to make a blood smear talaga, which is It will be discussed in a later session with you here in CDA. And then, you describe kung ano yung mga findings mo. So, ito, ginagawa namin itong mga pathologists. So, describe namin kung anong itsura ng peripheral blood natin. Sabi namin dito, with normocytic hypochromic anemia, elliptocytosis in here, slight polychromasia. Ganun siya. Tapos, we build this report. And we say it's consistent with iron deficiency anemia. So, meron ka ng final diagnosis. And this is the test used to confirm that condition. So, anong differences nila? CBC, it's a quantitative procedure. It is a screening procedure performed usually only by the medtech kasi nga, pinapasok mo lang yung tube sa makina, tapos ka na. You have a result within 30 minutes to 1 hour. Depende sa batch running. Pero mabilis lang to. Makakakuha ka ng result. And it's also inexpensive. Ang mura-mura ng test na to ng CBC. For peripheral blood smears, this is a qualitative test and it's performed by the doctor. So, pathologist kami yon. It's an expensive test kasi this requires already interpretation, and we will give a diagnosis based on what we find. So the turnaround time will be increased this time to 3 days just to make sure na tama ang mga processes na ginagawa namin, and if merong difficulty, mare-refer pa namin siya to other pathologists. And for the peripheral blood smear, it is a specific test, highly specific test na to, and it's a good confirmatory test for certain conditions. And that's for the end of my lecture. If you have any questions, please contact me during my office hours. And you can also download a copy of the presentation here in Moodle. Thank you.
Okay, may question ba kayo sa